الحمد لله رب العالمين الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونتوب إليه ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. I seek refuge in Allah from the rejected enemy Shaitan, with Allah's name, the most merciful benefactor, the most merciful redeemer. All praise is due to Allah alone. We praise Him and we seek help from Him. We ask forgiveness from Him. And we repent to Him. And we seek refuge in Him from our own weaknesses. From our own weaknesses. And I bear witness, there is no deity except Allah alone. He's the only one without an associate, without partners. And I bear witness that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is his messenger. And the opening was a Udu billahi min shariri anfusina wasiyati a'malina. We want to look at that because that sort of brings us into scope, into understanding as to where we are today, in today's world. Allah says He created man. And then He created man in the vested mode, and then He abased him in the lowest of the low, meaning that man is created on a higher level. Using the term higher here, but really what in the Quran it says Hassan is talking about the best, the most beautiful mode as compared to the rest of the creation. And what makes this a beautiful mode is what we are focusing on today. Man has been created to subdue, bring into His power that Allah has given him the creation. Man has been created to bring the creation into a form of submission, not by the power of man alone, but by the power of Allah. And Allah calls the creation to be submissive to man. And He tells man to be submissive to Him, Allah. The creation obeys Allah without question, so they submit to man, so it submits to man. Everything in the creation submits to man. Although man in his early development, in his early rational understanding of what the creation was about, he was submitting to the creation. Man was submitting to the creation and not the creator. Man began his earthly life believing that the water was God, believing that the thunder and lightning was God, believing that rocks was God. Man in his early development. And out of that, man did come to some realization, according to what Allah shows us in the Quran, that those things are not God. God is beyond that. But at the same time, man had to evolve himself. Man had to evolve from a material creature who dealt only with the material world to a creature that was spiritual. And there's a saying in some of the religious scripture that talks about Jacob and his struggle with the angels, and how he struggled with the angels all night. And when the daytime came, the angels said, "You won." In other words, they said to Jacob, you are the winner. And at that time, that's when he went from the name to Jacob to Israel. Israel, that's where that name comes from. It means the conversion from a material thinking, material understanding to spiritual concept, to spirituality, to understanding things spiritually now. Having a spiritual understanding. And what it talks about is there came a time in man's history where we did that. Collectively, human beings did that. Collectively came into that spirit and began to look at things spiritually. And from that, we know that that led man to the belief in the deity. Now, much of this can be found in the history of the human development, in the history of man, and it shows clearly that this process took place. It shows clearly that in the process of man coming into the realization of a deity being greater than the creation, it shows it in real terms. We get it in the story of Ibrahim, but in the real terms, we see it when we study histories like Egypt, for example. When we study Egypt, we find that at one time, the Egyptians, during the time of the pharaohs, they believed in the material world as having all of the power of the deities. They had names for each of the things and deities, and they were the only civilization like that. And until one of the kings, one of the pharaohs, came into enlightenment. And when he came into enlightenment, he was in opposition to all of the rest of the philosophers, all of the rest of the leaders, and all of the rest of the people who thought they knew about God at that time. He came into their opposition because he said, no, God is not the creation. God is not Amun-Ra. God is not the wind. God is not the sun. God is none of that. God is the creator of all things. God is the creator of life, life on earth. God is the creator of human life. God is the creator of everything you see and everything you can comprehend. This is what he said. In old ancient Egypt. Now, of course, that was against the philosophy of the ancient Egyptians. So the people of Pharaoh time sort of like changed with him. He put a new capital and everything, but they didn't accept it. They didn't accept it. Because as soon as he passed, they changed everything back. So this is why you find that in modern day Egypt, you don't find the revelation evolving out of Egypt like that. You don't find the revelation of belief in one God coming out of Egypt like that. But you do find that there was a people in Egypt at the same time. This Pharaoh was talking about one God, talking about one God. And those people who were there were a Semitic tribe. There was a tribe of people from northern Africa who went into Egypt and lived in Egypt for over 150 years. And they were a warlike tribe, but they did have a belief in the spiritual development of man. And Hickox is what they were called because of their great power of the time. And they began to control northern Egypt, the upper part of Egypt, and adopt different ways and different philosophies. And finally, the pharaohs of the greater part of Egypt ran them out into what was called Babylonian Canaan. And you've heard the story of the Exodus. You've heard the story how Moses came to the Pharaoh and said, let my people go, and so forth and so on, and then they traveled across the Red Sea. See, but now in history, we don't find that in history, in the historical records. You can look at Egyptian history, any history you won't find that particular story that way. But you will find this exodus that took place with the Semitic tribe and the Egyptians as they took Egypt back and ran them into Babylonia. But they didn't leave empty-handed. They left believing that God is one. So Allah blessed that people. Blessed that people to come into the understanding of God is one. And then revealed a book to them that we call Torah. The Torah was revealed to that Semitic tribe, that Semitic group. And the Torah was one of the first written books that had these laws and regulations in them to help get man into the proper way of understanding and proper development at the same time. Today's Hebrews, not Hebrews, but today's Jews call it the first books of Moses, Musa, which was the first 5 books of the Old Testament. It was from the book of Genesis to the book of Deuteronomy. That's the original Torah. The Torah now is made of about 34 books, 32 books, but those were put together by the Pharisees and other writers and scholars who adopted a way of life for those people to live under a particular law and live in particular rules. And then they brought another book out of that they call the Talmud. And Talmud is the book that most of them go by today. They don't go by the original Torah. They go by the book that tells them how to live their life today, which is the Talmud. The Torah originally was only in Hebrew. These people, the Semitic people, didn't speak Hebrew. They spoke every language in any country they was living in. They were, most times, as you know, in those countries where your borders are very close together, most people speak 3, 4, 5 different languages in order to get along with the people of the region. But the Torah was revealed in a language called Hebrew. So only the ones who were called the doctors of law or the rabbis knew how to read the Hebrew and knew how to interpret the Hebrew to the common man. So they began to interpret the Hebrew to the common man and guide the common man spiritually. And keep in mind now, this was the first revelation that we see in text that Allah revealed to man. This is why he says in Quran about the people of the book. If they follow the book, they're going to be all right. If they follow the book. Because the book is not incorrect. The book was not designed or revealed to take man wrong in any formation. The Torah was revealed to guide man correctly. It was not revealed to guide man incorrectly. The incorrectness came after those who start writing different things and adding it to the Torah, adding it to the book that was revealed, corrupting the language, corrupting the idea, corrupting the concepts. That came. And with that came another way of thinking, came another life. Because, now remember, in your studies, when you study the ruling concept, ideology, or thoughts, or philosophies, that's what rules the people. The same as today. Many people don't think they're being ruled by a philosophy, don't think they're being ruled by ideologies, but they are. Every minute of the day they're being ruled by philosophies and ideologies. And in competition with the Quran, which was revealed to get us out of that kind of thinking. But the people of that time began to shape and form a world that they would become rulers in, that they would become in charge. Their children would grow to be the leaders and the commanders of the direction that the world would take. So they begin to lead the world, and they had the power because the power is in religion. Culture cultures form. And the strongest part about every culture that's formed is their religion. Even when you look back and look into some of the jungle life, look at some of the tribes, ancient tribes, you will see that their strongest element in their culture is their religion. The religion dictates who's in charge. The religion dictates what happens and what does not happen, because the religion is the controlling factor in cultures. And those who control the religion control the mind of the people. Those who control the religion control the thoughts of the people. Those who control the religion control the people. This is why those who decided to rule the earth got into religion. Did not Shaitan say in the Quran that he's going to come from all sides, from behind them, talking about man, from in front of man, from on side of man? And he says he's going to be in the Sirat al-Mustaqim. In other words, he's going to be in the straight way. No matter what man does, he will not be able to avoid Shaitan as long as he follows that which Shaitan knows how to manipulate. Shaitan manipulates the emotional world. Shaitan manipulates that which we call feelings. And if we don't have control of it, Shaitan has control of it. Now, I know many of us may say, Shaitan doesn't control me. But look, we just came out of a holiday. They call a holiday a holy day. They call it Halloween. Do many of us know what that is about? Some of us, when the young children knock on the door for candy, we had the candy ready. Everybody's happy because it seems to be good on the surface. Halloween is like a precursor to something bigger. Halloween occurs on the 31st. And the very next day is All Saints' Day on the 1st of November. Halloween is supposed to be for the celebration and preparation of All Saints' Day. It first called it the New Year in Ireland, and with the Celts. The Celts. They, over 2,000 years ago, deemed it that day. That's when they're going to deem their New Year. Their New Year. And they begin to use that day as a day to worship all saints. Not just good saints. All saints. Because when you look at the history of the pagan, you will find good saints and you will find bad saints. Now, why is this important to us? Because that's ruling the thoughts. That's ruling the programs that come on TV. That's ruling the papers you read. That's ruling the thoughts that you communicate with one another. How you think. It's coming out of that language. It's coming out of that understanding. It's coming out of that world. And that world begin with all of these pagan concepts and ideas. When you look at some of those saints, you look at one called St. Nicholas. That's the one they celebrated Santa Claus in America. St. Nicholas. That's coming up. That's coming up. All of this is leading to that. That's coming up. Now, St. Nicholas was a man, a prince from Turkey, the real one. From Turkey, had plenty of money. And he used to give his money to people who needed it. And he used to provide things like, still Turkey now, he's coming from Turkey. There are a couple of things happen in Turkey that's very important to understand. The Khazars, I don't know if you know the name, they also are from Turkey. That's one of the largest Jewish organizations, Jewish groups on the planet. Ashkenazi and the Khazars make up 80% of all the Jews on the planet. European, out of Germany. And that's where they caught hold to this idea of St. Nicholas. St. Nicholas died December the 6th, around 434 AD, somewhere in that area. And the Roman church, they begin to worship that day. They begin to worship that day. They begin to worship that day as All St. Nicholas Day. And they were still pagans at that time. Pagan Rome. And then when the Roman Catholics, the first Roman Catholic Church, the first Pope, he said, we're going to take that day and move it to the 25th of December, which was another pagan holiday. And they also said that day we're going to say that was the day that Jesus was born. And we're talking like 336, somewhere in that neighborhood. And they begin to formulate these ideas of pagan worship. The idea, I remember I was even talking to a Muslim brother, and he was telling me about a Christmas tree. A Christmas tree that he had in his home because of some other kind of things he had justified in his own mind. But the Christmas tree is a pagan worship that even started before that time that we're talking about now. That started way in advance. It started talking about the equinox, the December equinox, when the darkness begins to leave and the light comes back between the 21st and the 25th of December. And the pagans of that time used to bring the evergreen tree indoors, celebrated in a form of life, because it was the only thing in their cold climate that survived during the wintertime and still looked like it had some life to it. Many people died of sickness in that part of the world. We talk about in Germany, in a cold time in Germany. They didn't have heat like we have now. They scuttled for food and scuttled to survive. So to them, the evergreen tree represented life. And they brought it inside and they began to decorate it. And these are pagan people we're talking about. These are not people who have submitted to the reality of God, the reality of Allah, the reality of a religion that's designed to guide the moral direction of man. They submitted to it, and then along came that whole merger of pagan ideas and concepts between St. Nicholas, between the Queen, one of the queens of England, who then adopted the idea of the Christmas tree because she married a German emperor. He was a prince of the empire, German empire. And she asked him to put one of those German trees together for her. And he made one, put it in ornaments. They used to put apples and things on them to represent life and things of that nature. And they made a big deal of it. And it became big in London. And from that point on, it became big in the whole concept and the whole idea. Passing through this holidays we're about to go into. And once it got over in America, it's a whole new ball game. America began to change the concept of Santa Claus into something a little different. It became very commercial. And once they was able to paint some pictures, and some artists started drawing some pictures of a little fat guy in a red uniform. And he rode reindeers as his way of transportation, going from rooftop to rooftop, giving toys to children. All of these ideas, all of these pagan concepts are bedded in what? They're bedded in influencing children. They're bedded in influencing children's minds, because children have young minds, and they can be easily influenced. So what do they say? They say Santa Claus brings gifts to kids if they be good all year round. And if they're not good, they don't get any gifts. Psyching out the minds of the children to get them to believe in something that does not even exist, so they can sell more toys, so they can sell more things, so they can sell things during that year that you wouldn't even think about buying any other time of year. I even see them selling Mercedes-Benz on the TV. I thought I'd never see that. But you see these grown people get up happy on Christmas Day. There's a Mercedes out there. But at any rate, the point is, we live in that world. And how we defend ourselves in that world comes with our understanding of our own book. And there's something else that I want to give to you. And this is deep into the concept of racism. Deep. Do you know that whole idea about Santa Claus and the St. Nicholas? When it got into the Netherlands did a whole new thing to it. A whole new thing. They got the idea from a man who wrote a book about that time of year. In 1660, around 1660, or 1646, somewhere around there. He wrote a book about this man called St. Nicholas who went through the town of Netherlands, up in the Dutch area. And they were giving children gifts. And if they were good, they got gifts. But if they weren't good, there was a helper with Santa Claus in this book, and what's adapted in the Netherlands right now. The helper. You know who the helper was? The helper was a Moor. They call him a Moorish. A black. In fact, Zwarte Piet, that's the name. Black Peter. That's what that means, Black Peter. And what they did, they took the Moorish people and they made them a helper to this concept of Santa Claus. And what he would do, if the children weren't good, he would put them in a sack and take them away and punish them. Or he would punish them right then and wouldn't give them anything. So he became an enemy to the children. And the way they began to paint this Black Peter, they would paint his face black. And they would put big red lips on him with paint. And they would put these big earrings in it. These are pictures we're talking about. And they would put kinky hair on it. And all through the Netherlands, these concepts and ideas were being taught to children. Children were growing up hating black people. Not because black people did anything to them, because this lie came out telling them that this helper of Santa Claus, who was a good man, was a man who would go punish them, was a man who they should be afraid of. So they grew up generation after generation with this thinking. And you know who discovered, or let's say who colonized America? It was the Dutch. The Dutch West India Company was one of the first. And they brought their philosophy with them. They brought their concept with them, and other Caucasians bought into it. So they grow up generation after generation hating black people for some stereotype, for somebody drew in a book, for some make-believe concept that those people had against the Moorish people. Because the Moors had brought some civilization to Europe at one time. So now you're wrestling out there every day. You're wrestling with a world that was created years ago. You're wrestling with an idea and concept that's way older than you are and I am. And it's deep down in the psyche of the people. Just by your appearance, you're not equal. Not only by your appearance they feel you're not equal, when you look in the mirror, you feel you're not equal. Because you see the same black face you've been taught by this society, this culture, was inferior to any other people. So you have to go through your own mind and wrestle with your own idea. Oh, I'm not inferior. I'm not lost. I'm not this. I'm not that. And now you get young black people coming home from some of these countries and some of these ways of life, and they tell their parents, you know, I don't like being black. I don't like being black. I want to be something else. I don't want to be black. They did a study right here in America, not just too long ago, and they studied the young children. And they picked through these dolls, these white and black dolls. They say, which is the evil doll? All of them picked the black doll. Which is the good doll? All of them picked the white doll. That's the psyche. Now, I'm only talking about the psyche and dealing with the concept of racism. But there's a bigger psyche dealing with the conduct, dealing with the concept, dealing with your natural behavior. Dealing with your behavior and how you should conduct yourself with the human life. How you should appear in life. How you should concentrate your efforts to make the world a better place. The negative is put in the mind and put in the mind of the people the same way as that story I just told you. But that story is a reality. I'm using the word story because I'm talking to you about it. But it's a reality. It's history. So, with that, we want to take a short pause. Now, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, Alhamdulillah, Rabbi Alameen, Ashhadu la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu Muhammadan Abduhu wa Rasuluh. Now, in closing, how is this problem solved? How is the problem solved that was created by people who accept paganism as a way of life and built the world that we now live in? So Allah says in Quran, He's going to destroy this world. He's going to destroy this world. Now, when He says that, many people are thinking of some physical world, thinking about the planet. They're thinking the planet that Allah is talking about. No, he's talking about the philosophy that ruled the people. The world that rules the people. You know a good movie you want to see that did get this idea across? Look at The Matrix, the first Matrix. That Matrix tell you about how the minds can rule the world. And Allah put it in the Quran, letting us know that He's going to destroy the world and make another world. He's going to make another heaven and another earth, He says, in the Quran. Because this is messed up. Shaitan is in control of this one. And he got in control of it because Allah gave him permission to control it. Gave him permission to control it. But on the day that the resurrection and the truth will become to light, that power of Shaitan will begin to disappear. And this is why you see Islam raising in the West. This is why you see Islam coming up here in America, and it's coming out of the mouth of the African American who have been persecuted. Who have been persecuted by that world that was formed back there out of all those superstitions. Formed back there out of all of those pagan ideas. The same one they called Black Peter is the same one who is getting the understanding of this Quran and be able to end and release the world of racism, release the world of tokenism, release the world of all these isms that hold us back from coming together as a human family. The same one. Allah says in the Quran that He will cause this to happen. He says in Quran that He will give enlightenment. Now, we should be beyond just reading the Quran in terms of just the words and reciting the Arabiya. We should be beyond that. The Arabiya only takes us to the concept. The concept is what we're about. It's like going to the grocery store and getting a whole lot of food, getting a steak, getting apples and oranges and pears and bring it all home. Sitting it on your table and don't eat it. make sense with it. So what sense would it make that man would learn to read the Quran in the Arabic and not understand it? Make no sense. Just to recite the words, just to recite what Allah has put in our minds and in our heart. No, it's for understanding. It should turn on a light in our mind. It should turn on a concept in our mind that Allah is doing this with His power and through the Quran. This happened right here in America. This is what happened with Imam Mahdi Muhammad. This is why when we was part of that movement that came just before that, we were able to see and be able to come into another understanding about Quran, about life. Because Allah had done it. Anybody who tell you or say to you that Allah is not the one that's responsible for Islam coming up in America, they're definitely not a Muslim, number one. And they're definitely not a people who believe in Allah, believe in God. And they don't believe in the power of truth. They don't believe in the power of justice. They don't believe in righteousness. After the conditions that the African American went through, only a God would do that. He would raise the people up in this kind of language, this kind of understanding, as an example of His power and His glory. After all of the things that we've gone through, especially some of the things I spoke with you about today. So we thank Almighty Allah for blessing us to be here on this day of Yom Jumuah. And we ask Allah to bless those who were unable to make Jumuah and all the righteous people of the planet Earth. Amen. Our Lord, give us the best of this world and the best of the hereafter, and protect us from the fire. Ameen.
Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, Ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, Hayya ala salah, Hayya ala falah, Qad qamatis salah, Qad qamatis salah, Allahu Akbar, La ilaha illallah.